Thank you for joining in. It's a weekday and we are logging in at 8 p.m. India time, which is great. So I can sense the enthusiasm in the group that we really want to break into product management, right? I'll try to do my justice, my viewpoint to the topic. There's a lot that is there on the internet, but I'll try to give how I view this and what strategies I deployed to break into product management. But before I do that, first and foremost, I would like to do a quick recap on about myself, right? So my name is Himadri, like all of you know by now. I have about 7 years of experience. I've worked across companies like HCL Dry Ice, Cognizant, and most recently I work at Haptik, where I'm the product manager for a product called Interact, which is a product which helps merchants and store owners leverage WhatsApp business APIs. If I have to talk about my skill and the domains that I've worked upon, uh, the technologies that I've worked upon have been primarily very domain agnostic. I've worked upon conversational AI, conversational commerce, and most recently, mobile apps. Apart from that, I like to read, I like to write, I like to go on hikes. But yeah, that's who I am as a product manager. Uh, it is important to identify what you do out of product management because a lot of your way of doing product management could stem for it. So if you have hobbies, I would highly recommend everyone to pursue them. Uh, be at them. This is a job, this is a work which you love, but of course you should have something which is outside of your work. Now, why are we here today and what are we going to cover? So we'll start off with the very basic question of what is product management. In fact, why product management? It's a question that has been answered in many different forms across the internet. You'll have a lot of people tell different stuff. This is my take on it. We'll speak and discuss around as to why breaking into a PM role is hard and what makes it hard. This is from various conversations I've had with people who've been hired in my company, students I've spoken to, etc. I'll speak about how did I transition into the role. I'll also speak about what steps and what tactical as well as strategic things you could do, both as a fresher as well as an experienced candidate to land a PM job. And I'll cover it up with some miscellaneous stuff that helps me as a PM in my day-to-day struggle of working as a product manager or success of shipping things out for GeoHaptic. And in the end, of course, we'll cover questions, any questions that you might have about this, on hiring processes, things that I covered about under the sky, whatever you feel like you want to ask, we'll talk about that. Yeah. So first things first, why become a product manager? Now, it's a very important question before you start your journey or embark upon your journey of how to break into product management. You should have your whys very set. In fact, it is one of the most common questions that would be asked to you in an interview, right? And you need to have your own answer. There is no set right answer for it. Every answer, I mean, it depends on whom you are and what education and what background you're coming from and why you decided to become a product manager, right? But I cannot stress enough on this that you need to clear out your why. It could be, whether it's a title that attracts you, whether it's a pay that attracts you, whether you enjoy the responsibilities that come along, or whether you don't enjoy the responsibilities that fall under your bracket in your current role, but you envision that as a product manager you'd get to do, right? So have your whys uh, absolutely listed out. My 2 cents would be not to have your reasons such as it's a hot title or a hot topic, or going after the pay package, right? That's quite obvious. You wouldn't want to get into a job just because of money. Money is always a byproduct of it. But have your whys cleared out, right? Before you start your journey, think about it, think hard, read about what people have said uh, when trying to answer this question. That will give you an idea of, okay, this is how, and this is what people say when they say, why product management, right? What I said and what I believe in, I cover that in my journey as a transition from my earlier roles into product manager. You get an insight of how I approach that question, but highly recommended that you guys should sort this out. Now, once you've figured out why you want to do product management, you would realize that getting into product management is hard. I've listed out some of the reasons that I have seen across with candidates. Uh, Feel free to type it out in chat if there's any other reason that you've experienced or any other roadblock that you've seen. Now, the biggest one which I've seen, which is a sort of a chicken and an egg situation, which is people ask for product experience without giving you the product experience. It's a classic case. If you are into the same boat, don't worry. Almost every other product manager who's trying to break out into product management or someone who's trying to become a PM for a different product has faced this, right? Uh, that's the first challenge that I've seen. The next one is skill set and formal education. Uh, Now, there are two ways to look at it. One, there are some product roles where the skill set required is very explicit, it's very detailed, and it's very specific. And in some, it's very ambiguous. So, as a product manager, there is no set technology that, okay, if you know JavaScript or if you know Python or if you know HTML5 or CSS, you can be a good product manager. There's no set playbook of getting into product management with a particular skill set specifically in terms of technologies or tools that you can learn. Yes, there is guidance around it, but because there is no sure short way of getting into it or sure short way of getting to know a skill set and then getting into it, that makes it hard because of the ambiguity around it, right? Similarly, stemming from the ambiguity part, the other part is there's no definite role and responsibility. Now, you'd see a lot of times the job description from product manager varies from one company to another, and there's a reason for it. Uh, Reasons such as what kind of company it is, what stage the product is into, what kind of product is that, what level of expertise or market share the product has already achieved, uh, what domain the product fares into. Is it a technical product? Is it a customer facing product? Who's the target audience? Right? There's a lot of factors that decide what kind of roles and responsibilities you get to partake in or you get to own as a product manager, which makes it hard because when you're preparing for a role, you don't really exactly know unless you've scored that interview. And of course, the interview rounds. I don't know if you guys are aware, but I think most of you are because you have a fair bit of idea of how and what product management is. Product management rounds are typically quite grueling. Grueling in the sense you'd have at least 4 to 5 rounds involving product breakdowns, involving collaborative effort, involving situations where you have to demonstrate that, okay, yeah, this is a conflict management skill that I've acquired over the years and I can really solve it. Skills that you'd have to demonstrate that, okay, I have the aptitude to solve this problem, logical reasoning, questions like, hey, design a toilet for a blind person, stuff like that. Ambiguous questions which you have to give a structure and arrive at a conclusion. So, which makes product manager interviews really hard. You might have an engineering route here and there where they talk about APIs, talk about how the backend frameworks work, how front end really works, how do they connect with each other, some basic stuff about database. So these rounds are quite grueling. And then the last one being oversaturated market. This is the only point which we cannot do anything about. Like most jobs, and it's a wave, right? There was a time when data scientists or being into data science was the hot cake. There was a time when being a consultant was being a hot cake. So similarly, the wave right now is for product managers. There are many reasons for it. Low barrier to entry, people figuring out that, hey, if I have a little bit of an understanding of coding and if I want to get into business side of things, product management is for me. People seeing that there's a lot of, it's one of the few jobs that pays really well in tech. Uh, Typically, tech is known to pay really well to guys who are coders themselves, like developers. But product management is one job that almost matches or is quite close to job and salary ranges for a developer or for someone who's hardcore into tech, right? So whatever the reasons are, it's an oversaturated market. There are a lot of people who are vying for it. There's a lot of competition, but hey, there's nothing we can do about it. Well, one thing I can say for sure is if you shy away from competition, product management is not for you, because once you even get that job, you will have competition from other products that are there in the market. So vis-a-vis, you are competing with other product managers, or sometimes, maybe competing per se with other product managers within your organization for that promotion or for that hike, whatever it may be, right? So, yeah, it's one of the realities, and it is going to stay. But it makes product management hard, specifically hard getting into. Now, how do you crack that? In fact, how did I do it? So, education-wise, I have done my bachelor's in technology. I'm an engineer, like I would assume most of us in this call. If not, please give me a shout out. That would be really interesting. But and it's quite an obvious route, right? So I started out as an engineer. I had my first job in Cognizant. Is there someone speaking? All right. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in chat, or probably at the end of the whole thing, we can definitely chat and discuss about it. So I started my journey as a business analyst. My first job was in Cognizant. Now, the reason I have this written over here is you would see how I've transitioned from a business analyst role to a pre-sales role, and then landing eventually my first product management gig. Now, what I learned over those years was I developed and consciously worked on things which I could transfer or use as a product manager. And I've listed those down over here. As a product manager, and this is something because uh, I broke into product without having product experience, but I already had some industry experience, which gave that leverage to me. Now, if you look at the first role that I had, right, as a business analyst, there were some tools that I was using, right? Simple tools such as, your whole Microsoft suite, to running basic queries on SQL, or learning basic database tools such as Metabase. So I learned and got a first-hand experience on learning and using tools. The other thing that I learned in my first role was processes, which is quite important, specifically if you are becoming a product manager for a bigger company or in a B2B setting. You need to be very well versed with what is the process, how does a sprint typically run, how do you prioritize bug. Even though these are the things which are very specific to an org, and there's no set framework, but you still get a hands-on experience to, okay, this is how it happens, this is what it entails, what in fact even a sprint means, uh, who runs it, how do you run it, how do you run agile processes, what does a scrum master supposed to do, how do they do it, what are the fallacies involved in it, all of it. So I got well versed with understanding the business processes of running a project. The third thing that I learned is collaboration and communication, because the way a product manager sits and the kind of work that you'd be doing, you would be talking to almost everyone in the organization all the times. Uh, and while I'm saying that statement, it majorly also depends on what kind of product it is and company, etc., etc. But more or less, for most of the roles, this is the scene. You'll be speaking to your sales, you'll be speaking to your pre-sales, you'll be speaking to your QAs, you'll be speaking to internal stakeholders, business owners, you'll be speaking to customers. So there's a lot of communication that would be happening. And when I say communication, it would be written as well as verbal. So you need to practice that, right? You cannot just not be articulative in front of someone when you're talking to them. Specifically in the post-COVID world, when our calendars are already filled with meetings, you don't want to take 10 minutes to explain something which could have been done by a simple email or another 2 minutes, right? So you develop that when you work. At least I developed that when I was working as a business analyst in my first gig. And like I said, articulation, right? Whether it is verbal or written, that's another thing that you learn, or I learned when I was a business analyst. And the last and the most important thing that I learned as a BA was having your customers as first, right? And this is something that all of you must have heard a lot. That as a product manager, you always have to think customer first, and it is quite important, right? Because at the end of the day, whatever you are making uh, as a product manager, whatever product you are managing, there's only two job or two purposes that it actually serves. One, the target audience that it caters to has to like it. Second, it should earn some money for the business. Right? As simple as that. So they cannot simply just like it and not give you money unless you're making a product which is totally out free and there's no component of revenue in it, which is hardly the case. But these are the two cornerstones of product management of what you are doing and why you're doing it, right? So that customer centric approach of always thinking about whether the customer would really like it, whether it makes their life easier, whether this is what they really require to solve their problem. A common analogy that I read somewhere, and it's a very old analogy, I think a lot of you must have heard about it, is uh, so there was a customer. So the story goes like this: that there's a customer, it's getting wet, and the customer says that, "Hey, I'm getting wet and I need a towel." They go back to the business and say that, "Hey, they need a towel because they're getting wet all the time." So what the business does is gives them a towel. The customer comes back again after an hour and says, "Hey, I'm getting wet again. The towel didn't really solve my purpose." And what was actually happening was he was getting wet because he was standing in the rain. I know it sounds quite comical, but they were standing in the rain and towel wouldn't have served the purpose for them, right? They required something which would, the solution was they need to be dried off or they don't need to get wet. So for that, they require an umbrella. So as a product manager, one of the skills that you need to develop is thinking about, okay, if he's requested for a towel, does he really require a towel? What is the use case? What exactly is happening right now? Can I talk to him? Can I understand properly what is happening? Ask the whys, right? There's a very common, famous approach of 5 whys, very famous model where someone comes you with a problem, you try to get deep into it. You ask why for the fifth time, and then you eventually realize what is the problem. So that sort of mindset, that sort of mental model, I built up when I was a business analyst at Cognizant. This helped me move into pre-sales. Uh, it was a dash of luck as well. I'll be very honest. My project was ending, and I found a role, internal opening, where they had a role for a pre-sales person, and then I jumped into the pre-sales role, where I acquired a new set of skills. And what are the things that I learned? As a pre-sales person, I learned client exposure and storytelling. Now, as a product manager, you would have to be really good at storytelling. And by storytelling, I mean read the room and figure out what analogies and what examples work the best for them to understand what you're trying to say, right? This is something that I got to practice when I was working in pre-sales. The other thing that I learned was solutioning. I was pre-sales. I was working as a pre-sales for uh, actually three solutions. One was an OCR, where it read the you know digitally. It basically converted whatever was written on a piece of paper digitally, and we were doing it for a truck company in Australia, where they had a lot of documentation. But going through the documentation, of course, involved that because there's a manual person involved, there were a lot of errors and there were a lot of time to value what happening was really slow, efficiency was down. So what we did was we made a OCR solution for them where through a mobile phone scanner, you could scan the document and then the document would be converted into a digital format where everything that you've written would be written in a document, right? Getting converted into a document. And this is way back in 2015 that I'm talking about, right? Now the technology almost sounds very obvious. You can have free apps that do it for you, but back then this was quite in the vogue. So solutioning for these kind of products, these kind of solutions really gave me an insight. Okay, how a business thinks. Questions like, okay, what kind of documents we're going to process? Are we going to process all types of handwriting? Uh, how much important it is that whatever is written crystal clear. Uh, how many documents can we process in one go? What is the benefit, the end benefit, quantifiable benefit that is there for a customer once the document is being converted? Is it time to value? Yes, if it is, how many hours or how many minutes? Uh, how efficient have we become? Are we doing less errors now? If we are, how have we captured that? Are we doing it on a month by month basis, right? So you're not just making a solution, you are business thinking about it. You are thinking about what would be the business outcome of it, right? I mean, what is the derived value that business is getting after making this OCR solution? So that sort of thinking, that sort of rigor, and that sort of eye, uh, I worked on it while I was working as a pre-sales person in Cognizant. The third thing that I worked also, which is quite synonymous with when in my role as a business analyst, was collaboration, communication, and selling. And it might sound a bit funny, but believe you me, as a product manager, you will have to do a lot of selling. Not sales per se, but selling to your internal folks. Uh, uh, Not selling to the outside folks, but internal folks. And by internal folks, I mean you would have to position your ideas to your engineering manager, to your business owner, to your senior product managers, and to your fellow mates that, hey, this is a feature, let's say, I want to build, and I really believe in it. And I think we should be able to do it. And if we do it, XYZ will be impacted, right? So for this, you need to essentially sell your feature, right? You need to sell your vision. And it gets harder because when you do this selling internally, uh, they've seen the skeleton, so you can't really lie to them in a way. And when I say lie, you can't basically dilly daily or not say the exact truth, but tweak it a bit. Uh, and this is a luxury you have when you position or sell to outsiders. And I'm not saying you should lie to outsiders, but what I mean is if you sell internally, they exactly know what you're talking about, so they'll ask you the hard questions, right? So as a product manager, you should really be good at selling. Another one of the things that I sort of worked upon when I was into pre-sales, because we were answering a lot of RFIs, RFPs, uh, day in and day out. So I had to communicate with a lot of other teams when an RFP would be answered, do it against a deadline, and then follow through, starting from writing an RFP to submitting an RFP to doing a presentation to eventually winning it, and then ensuring that the program manager takes the handover nicely for it to be implemented actually into a project, right? So the whole full cycle, starting from farm to fork, uh, is what I got to practice upon when I was in pre-sales. Articulation, I think I've already spoken about. This is something that was recurrent while I was in, whether I was working as a BA or as a pre-sales guy. And lastly, I got to learn about technology, right? Again, just this is purely a stroke of luck that I got to work on technologies which were very niche back then. So Cognizant had a special vertical called as Global Technology Office, where they worked on all emerging technologies, and I got to work upon all the solutions that I spoke about, right? One being OCR, the other solution that we worked upon was a facial recognition tool. Then we worked upon uh, computer vision based technology, where what we were doing was we were identifying uh, from the fundus images of a patient whether this person has or will develop diabetes in future or not. It's called diabetic retinopathy, and you guys can look it up. But we were working on these really exciting technologies, so I got to understand the tech of how these things work, specifically, you know. And these are all applications of AI. So machine learning, natural language processing. I got to work on a chatbot which was on an open source chatbot NLP platform, computer vision, like I spoke about, and the OCR, which is optical character recognition. So I got to understand a little bit about how tech stacks work, how these clusters work, how data modeling happens, how data sets play a huge role, how segregation of data needs to be done before fed into an AI, how the feedback loop happens into AI, what is the training mechanism for a model, etc., etc. Now, after I've done all of this, I had developed a set of both soft skills as well as a set of hard skills that I could position myself to land my first product management. which in fact was for a chatbot in Cognizant itself. Uh, so this sort of transfer that I did, so here is how I went about it, right? When the opening came within my company, I said, and the way I positioned myself is that, hey, and it was in the same team. I've been into the pre-sales of the same team. I understand the solutions. I understand what our clients need. I understand why and how we've lost our bids and RFPs. Uh, what our solution needs to actually win those bids. I also understand how the tech stack works because I've been part of the solution. I've submitted those proposals. I've written all 50 pages of okay how this product works and detailed description of how it works. So I have a lot of understanding of how the product actually works and our target audience. That gave my seniors the confidence to, okay, hey, instead of us hiring someone from the outside and training them, why not give this person a chance? And that's how I landed my first product manager gig. So building credibility and building hard skills and soft skills so that it's easier for them to decide uh, to hire me rather than them hiring someone else where they would have to train them on solution, train him on certain aspects of it, teach him how things work, who's who, what roles we follow, what cycles we follow, what sprints we follow, what mechanisms we follow. And then that person would need some time to actually imbibe it and then eventually apply it, right? Which is a long time. So that's one way of going about it, and that's how I did. My why, because I spoke about why, right? In the at the start of this whole presentation, I spoke about you should have your why very clear of why you want to get into product management. So my reasons were very clear. I had two reasons. One, uh, even during that time, it was one of those things that was just rising and it was a hot cake, right? Everyone seems to be talking about it, and it sounded really interesting. More than that, what I also figured was no matter how good a presentation or how good an RFP response I do, I will always be bottlenecked by the kind of product that I have, right? So if there is a capability that is not there in the product, no matter how good I articulate, no matter how good I sell, no matter how good I've written, my RFP will win only if the product reaches that particular benchmark, right? So I figured if I'm getting bottlenecked by product and I know what our product needs to have, why not try getting into the product and making a change over there so that eventually the effect falls into our RFP and we win those RFPs, right? That was my thought process back then. It took me some time to eventually realize it's not that simple. There is a reason why that feature has not been launched, but it's only after I joined the role that I figured it out. But that was my honest outlook towards it, and that's how I landed my first role. So you need to figure out your why. You need to develop those skills. You need to build credibility. Now, how do you do that? Uh, if I have to just bifurcate someone who wants to break into product management, they will fall into two categories, right? And he wants to join a product, or he or she wants to join a product manager role, but does not have product management experience, right? So there are just two categories of it. The first is a fresher, and the second is an experienced individual or an industry veteran. I fall in the second category, which by the way is my favorite category. But I'll first cover the first part, which is as a fresher. So if you're a fresher, you're doing your masters, you're doing your bachelors, you've done an internship here and there, or maybe you've not done an internship, and you want to become a product manager. So how do you go about it? At least in my view, step one, you find out or figure out what company or what product or what technology you want to be a product manager of. Now, what do I mean by that? A product manager at Zomato and a product manager at, let's say, a Stripe. These guys are doing different jobs, right? Even though the role is common, the framework and the methodology is common, but the products and the industry that they are into are way too different, right? Zomato being your into food and Stripe being into banking and transactions, right? So the first thing that you need to figure out is if you want to be a product manager, which company or at least which product you want to join as a product manager. Yeah, I would highly recommend go for an industry or types of product rather than a company, because within a company you will have different sorts of products. You should always go for a product. So if you say you want to become a product manager of Google or at Google, have a little bit of idea. Okay, I like products which are, let's say, into payments. So whether it is GPay, whether it is Bharat Pay, whether it is Paytm, whether it is Monzo, or whether it is, you know, UPI, any of these, right? I like into products which are into payments. So figure that niche or figure that particular product that which attracts you and have a set with you. And the reason I say that is important is because this will be very detrimental to what kind of preparation and what kind of outlook or what kind of things you should be reading about when you prep for the interview, right? Because a product manager who's going for an interview at, let's say, a Swiggy versus a product manager who's going for an interview, let's say, an Urban Clap, will be asked different questions, will be asked, different case studies and mindset different scenarios, right? Not saying the underlining question would be different, right? Some basics will always be there. You will have a figurative, ambiguous question that, hey, you're in the middle of a sea. How do you figure out you have to reach land, right? Very ambiguous. Like, what does that question even mean? So you will have questions, these kind of questions asked in both the companies, but it really helps if you zero down your search and not be too generic about, okay, I want to get into product management. I don't care whatever role it is. I'm fine with every role. I don't think so. That is recommended at least by me. You should at least have some idea, right? Because what kind of product manager you have to be, what role you have to be is hugely dependent on that, right? A product which is just starting out, they might be looking for a growth PM. A product which is already started out but is scaled, they might be looking for a different sort of PM, right? There are different sort of product managers as well, by the way. A product which is too technical, they might be looking for a technical product managers, right? Products like Postman, which are a very technical product, right? It helps you and helps you manage APIs and do lots of amazing things with API. They would want you to be highly technical. So figure out what product, what domain, uh, and that would really help you to figure out, okay, how do I prep for it? The next step is building a product portfolio, and this is very much in line with your step one. So if I know I'm going to apply as a product manager at Uber, my product portfolio will contain examples or case study breakdowns of Uber, Gojek, or Lyft, or in the UK you've got there are a couple of more. I just can't seem to remember the names, but you get what I'm trying to say, right? Because I'm trying to go for a product manager role at Uber, I would probably have more case study breakdowns of companies which are into ride sharing, right? Or products which are into ride sharing and services like that, right? To bring a marriage and to sort of bring a familiarity when I share my product portfolio that with that particular person, right? So number one, that. So build your product portfolio, and it includes your tear downs, it includes your case studies, it includes your probably low fidelity wireframes of if you were the product manager for, let's say, uh, Twitter, what things you would do, right? Something like, for example, Twitter right now does not allow you to edit your tweets, right? So if you were a product manager for Twitter, how would you do that? And in fact, why would you do that, right? So probably a whole analysis of why you should be doing it and how would you employ it, etc., etc., right? So that kind of product portfolio, that's one, that would be the another step to figure out and crack a job as a fresher. The third would be to scout roles, small time gigs at startups or APM programs. Now, I'll start off with APM programs. Companies like Google, Amazon, Microsoft, all of these have their APM programs. You can check out their individual websites. You'll find a plethora of options over there. Uh, as you would assume, they are very competitive. They have a very fixed number of seats, and there are a lot of people vying for it. But you can definitely take a crack. If not that, uh, for your first time role, I would recommend going for a startup, right? Going for a company which has just grown. They're looking for someone to help them scale from 0 to 1, uh, and join there as a PM. Now, believe you me, when you join a startup and specifically a small org or a very small setup as a PM, you might not just be doing product management. You might be asked to do, hey, can you get on a sales call and pitch? Can you probably do customer support by addressing a customer query? Hey, can you probably help us out with the designs? You'll be asked to do a lot of stuff, which may be or may not be very much confined to product management, but that's fine. And the reason that is fine is, one, you get to learn and understand the whole ecosystem of what revolves around a product manager, right? But where do you fit and what all you contribute to, even if you're not a product manager. Number one, that. Number two, eventually when the startup grows and they realize that, oh my God, okay, now we've grown and we really need a seasoned product manager, not someone who does everything for us. There are high chances that they'll promote you, or probably they'll figure you out or have you as the head of product, or at a senior position, because you are someone who's done it all, understands the product, understands the customer, has seen the whole cycle, and it'll be very easy for them to fit you rather than get a new person. And if at all they get a new person, you can always change your organization by leveraging all the experience that you've had working in a startup, right? So highly recommended. As a fresher, that would be a great training ground for any fresher to start off in a startup as a PM. Step four would be your certifications, your courses, and your hackathons, as well as networking. There are a lot of things that I've included in this. Um Pragmatic has a very good course where you can sort of understand the nuances of product management. There are several other product management cohorts that are run online. Figure out which cohort works for you, which sort of course works for you. Join them. Join them not only for learning stuff as a product manager, learning the skills that you require as a product manager, but also to network with people, right? Because when you pass out from there, not only you've learned stuff, but you've also made connections to other future product managers in your class, right? So you've built up your sort of a tiny bubble of product managers that which helps in product management. You always want to cross reference, discuss with your peers that, hey, this is something that I've been facing in my organization. How do I go about it, right? So it really helps there. And the last step to break into product management as a fresher would be your interview prep. Like I said, the rounds are grueling. You will have around 4 to 5 rounds at least. Again, depends on company to company. Don't quote me on it, but mostly that's the number of rounds that are run. Uh, and this interview prep not only revolves around you being asked ambiguous questions, you being asked questions which sort of try to judge your analytical skills as well as your aptitude, but also technical questions. There will be scenarios where you might have to work in a collaborative exercise for them to judge that, okay, how does this person work with others? Is he able to convince people in the group, right? How does he communicate? Is he something as small as he doesn't listen to the other person and just chimes in between? A lot of people inherently do that. Like you're on a call with someone, he's still talking, but you sort of chime in and say, hey, this is something that I want to say. So smaller nuances like this, you'll be judged upon, you'll be interviewed upon. And of course, goes without saying how technical your product is, your technical questions will be there. An important part of your interview prep is also your resumes. So follow the basics of your resumes. I'll cover that in a bit as to what I do and the basic stuff that I follow. Now, how do you break into product management as someone who has industry experience? And this is my favorite route. Not biased because I've done it, but it just makes sense, right? Because why it makes sense to me at least, and makes sense more, is because product management is one of those jobs where you would have to have an understanding, a little bit of understanding from all sorts of fields. Uh, With an engineer, when you communicate or when you talk to them and discuss them about a feature, you need to understand the technicalities in terms of, okay, this is possible and this is not possible, right? When you speak about a feature to your sales guy, you need to understand that, hey, he has some targets to meet. This is how we'll increase our ARR if this feature is launched, and this is how I'm going to talk or try and explain him how to position this feature. When you talk to your customer success person, you need to understand how his days packed with so many bugs and so many queries and so many customer questions coming in, how this feature will help him solve those, right? So because you're doing a lot of this sort of communication, if you have had industry experience, and you could be part of any of these, you could be an engineer, as a developer, you could be customer success, sales, pre-sales, business analysis, uh, anything. And when then you transition over product, it just makes sense because now you're able to connect the dots. So any which ways, what is the first step you do? The first step you do is you build some credibility. You get good at what you're currently doing. So uh, if you are a developer, try and at least get good at it. And by getting good at it, write scalable code, don't write spaghetti codes, have smoother sprints, understand how your frameworks work, etc. Build your credibility, right? And this is something that I did when I was working as a business analyst and as a pre-sales guy. I sort of built a reputation of, okay, this guy really understands the product. His RFPs are really crisp and clear in about understanding the product, and there are a lot of RFP wins. He contributes to product suggestions a lot. So have that credibility built up in your organization if you're already working with a certain stream. The next step would be to build a product portfolio. Now, this definitely helps. I think today, with all of us being digital, it doesn't hurt to have your online presence. Have a website or have a LinkedIn profile which sort of contains some tiered rounds, some analysis on how this product has fared, any recent product update that has happened, your take on, okay, how this should have been done. For example, Slack recently changed their whole overlay. So what are the design principles that you see have been implemented in Slack? What is your take on it? So, have a say about these products, build a portfolio, quite similar to how someone would as a fresher would do. And the third would be try and become a product manager at your current org. So a lot of org have rotational programs. A lot of orgs have you know these openings within their org which you'll get to know about in advance. And like I said, in my case, like the company saw that it was much easy for having a guy who's already working as a pre-sales to give him a break as a first PM rather than hire a new PM altogether, right? So there are high chances that you can do that. Again, it depends on company to company. It depends on what kind of product you are. Sometimes they would prefer an experienced guy because an experienced guy would bring in those processes, and they just can't afford to take a guy who's just starting out their product management career. So again, it depends, but give it a shot if you already have some experience. And the fourth step, again, if you cannot do that, well, leverage your current expertise and become a product manager at a startup, right? Like I said, uh, again, it depends on person to person. I honestly prefer being thrown into a situation and learning on the go rather than me going with a curriculum, cracking exams, learning through courses. But that's just who I am. There are a lot of people who've succeeded uh, otherwise as well. People who gotten into programs, learned stuff, and then joined cohorts and then become a product manager. But if you already have little experience and if you don't want to probably invest your time and money into learning a course or getting into a specialization skill, become a product manager at a startup, right? So you can do that. And the last step is interview prep, right? Irrespective of whether you are a fresher in an industry experience or anyone or someone with 10 years of experience as a product manager already, you will have to put in the effort for interview, right? You will have to prep for it. Uh, there's no shortcut to it. You will have to do it. It's just one of those things, and you'd have to prep. The higher and the more experience you have, the more that you need to put in the prep. specifically with respect to what product you're going for and what company you're going for. So yeah, these are the two ways, two subsets of how you can break into product management. One caveat with all these things and steps that I covered about. Now, these are just general guidelines and things that I've seen around me and from my experience. Like most things in life, there is no set path or set 1, 2, 3, 4 to do anything, right? You can probably skip to step 5 directly if you know a lot of stuff and if the stars align and luck is in your favor and a lot of other things. So you need to figure out what path works for you. But this is a generic outline of how what are the maximum chances for something actually being successful. Now, stuff that helped me. Now, what is the stuff that has helped me till now? And I continue to do this right now. Number one, I follow some global product leaders. There are a plethora on Twitter, LinkedIn, likes of Sachin Rekhi, Shreyas Joshi, senior PM leaders at Meta. So I follow them. I have them as my connections. I sometimes reach out to them with particular doubts or things or just to get their advice on. Do that. Uh, it will sort of help you understand, okay, how and what is the global product community saying with respect to product management or with respect to a certain problem or with respect to a particular area, right? So do that. If you're an aspiring product manager, your LinkedIn should be filled with product managers uh, who are, in the same industry or in the same product as you want to go to, which brings me to the first point that I said, that why, and figure out what product, right? And then do it. The second thing which I would recommend is learn some tools. I'm not going, so there is no specific set of tools that I'm going to say that, hey, learn Figma or learn Notion and we'll succeed. No. What I would say is pick a tool which is famous, pick a tool which you will think gets used by product managers for that aspirational role that you're going for. So for example, if you're going for a role as a product manager in, let's say, Haptik, uh, you will find a lot of stuff online and be able to understand that, okay, at Haptik, this is the tool stack that is used, right? For analytics, Google Analytics is used, or Mixpanel is used. For design, Figma is used, or in some places, Canva is used. For roadmap, Jira is used, or uh, you know, uh, Atlassian is used. For writing, Notion is used. For no-code platforms, you have Zapier, or we're using Integromat, right? So what I mean to say is, once you figure out what role, what type of product, and what company, learn the tools that you will find about are being used in that organization and try and learn those, right? And most of them have a free trial. Most of them have a good enough resource documentation available on the internet, and it's very easy to learn. You don't have to pay for it. You don't have to go to a course to specifically learn those tools. The third, I would say, explore different product in the domain that you're interested in. So while I was working as a product manager for a chatbot, I had a tab on every chatbot company out there, right? I had a subscription, in fact, of most of the product companies which were into chatbot. Uh, whether it is IBM Watson, whether it was Google, whether it was Microsoft Luis, whether it was Amelia, whether it was any other chatbot company. So I had a competitor sheet and had an active subscription, and I used to make it a point in my day-to-day life that, okay, what are these guys doing and what have they recently launched? What is exactly happening? Okay, GPT-2 has been launched. How does GPT-2 works? Is there any chatbot company which has employed GPT-2? Stuff like that, right? So be aware of how the ecosystem is shaping up for the product that you're going for. Master storytelling and conflict management. Uh, Storytelling, I say, because like I said, there will be a lot of selling when you're a product manager internally. Uh, you'll be grooming features with the team. You'll be explaining the feature set with your stakeholders. So you really need to master the art of storytelling, making them understand that, okay, this is the feature, this is what it does, this is the impact, and this is why we really need it right now, right? uh, Metrics and outcome driven. You should be in love with uh, anything that is outcome driven and not outcome driven per se, right? There's a very famous saying in product management which goes like, what gets measured gets improved. And this is a common theme that you'd see even in product manager resumes, right? Uh, Whenever you're writing a product manager resume or whenever you're crafting your product manager resume, in short, Ankita, would you want to go on to the move? I think there's a little bit of background. Yeah. So when you're crafting your resumes, right? One thing that I've seen is a lot of people, what they do is they'd say, okay, I made a very, I, you know, improved our UX, which led to customer delight, or I did something, I launched this feature which eased onboarding process, right? Don't write ambiguous and generic statements like that. Always, whenever you are in your resume, write stuff which is metric driven, write stuff which is exactly telling you in numbers what impact it created. So for example, if you've improved the UX, you would say that, hey, I improved the UX and it led to an improvement of 60% in the CSAT scores, right? Or if I launched this feature, it led to uh, an ARR increase of 15%, right? So always numerically inclined and metric driven outcomes that should be mentioned in your resumes, number one. And you should sort of practice and preach it when you're preparing for a PM role, right? And the last thing that I do a lot is read product management books, videos. There are a lot of podcasts, YouTube channel. Pragmatic has a YouTube channel. There are a lot of others out there. You can just search it on the internet. Best product management channels, and you'll figure out there's product school, PM school. There's a plethora of options, right? But follow them. I'll not say follow all of them. Just figure out, okay, which one's content makes the most sense to you, and follow them. That will again keep you updated as to, okay, what is happening in the product world, what kind of frameworks others are using, and what others have to say with their experience. Right. So yeah, that sort of brings me to the end of this quick and short connect of ours. Happy to answer any questions that you guys have.
Hi, Himadri, Umesh. Thanks for an insightful session. I had just one question. Some of the practices that one can be expert in storytelling.
So one of the things that I do, Umesh, in storytelling is one, perfect the first of all, read the room. If you are speaking to a group of engineers, right? Your examples and the analogies that you're going to give, if you have analogies which are related to software, it would work with them, as compared to if you're going to present something or story tell a group which is full of marketeers. Over there it would be different, right? So first of all, do storytelling. In your storytelling, you would read the room, figure out whom you're actually talking to. Accordingly, figure out your analogies. Accordingly, figure out your examples to ease it out for them. The second thing that I would say in storytelling is keep it short. No one likes a long answer. No one likes a long talk. Cut to the chase. Keep it really, really short. Uh, Use infographics. Use as much as digital media as you can to simplify stuff. So one thing you must have noticed, and I don't know whether it worked or not. I'm hoping and assuming that it did. Throughout my presentation, I used a lot of memes and gifs and stuff like that, right? And it's in vogue. People understand and connect it to better, sure, but it helps you in creating that flow and it helps you to storytell. So yeah, I think yeah, these three things: reading the room and using a lot of gifs and using the right analogies. I think you should be fine.
Thanks.
So,
I am
Yeah, yeah. Go for it.
Himadri Ramesh Kota here. So in one of the scenario you are talking about the product portfolio, or is it a company portfolio?
So Ramesh, your voice is a bit muffled. Can you speak a little bit louder, close to the microphone?
Yeah, So you are talking about the product portfolio.
Yes. Yeah.
So what exactly the it gives the added advantage to the resume or anything when you are going to the interview?
Correct.
Why is it required actually?
Understood. So, see, because you are trying to break into product management, right? And you've not done product management in the real world. So, the reasoning behind doing a product portfolio is saying to the other person that, hey, now listen, I've not done product management, but over the years, if I'm a fresher, like I said, for a fresher, it'll be a little bit different. And for a person who's already experienced, it'll be a little bit different. But you're saying that, hey, I have accumulated a set of soft and hard skills over these years. And how do you communicate now this to them, right? You've not got an interview, you've not spoken to them, you've just sent them your resume and it says certain things. And uh, the rule of thumb is your resumes should not be more than one page unless you have patents or unless you've done like, something which is like really huge. Always go for one page of resumes and that's it. So how do you communicate all of that in just a page, right? That is exactly where your portfolios would come in, where you would, when you've, let's say, put in a product tear down, and you've explained that, okay, hey, this is why Netflix is has launched a 199 plan, or this is why uh, an Amazon Prime is a competitor of Netflix, or how Amazon Prime can beat Netflix, right? I'm just using that as an example, as an OTT platform. If you have a product tear down on that, or case study on that, it will demonstrate to the hiring manager that, okay, this guy, while he does not have that experience, his thinking is right now like that. He looks at things in a very detailed way. He has those soft skills, whether in terms of articulation while he's written, or in terms of storytelling that he's done in a written format, or is in terms of him understanding how a Netflix would work, and what kind of servers and what kind of technology they would have in the backend to allow so many people view a video at the same time, right? And for it to never shut down, right? And for Netflix to really work seamlessly, even when you're in a low connection or a low mobile data or a low internet zone, right? Again, it depends on your case study. But that is exactly what you're trying to communicate uh, from your portfolio to a hiring manager. And that is why you should have one.
So for this, can we prepare a slide deck to present over there,
Oh,
or
yes,
how?
absolutely. The format is not really important. It can be a slide deck, it can be a Word doc, it can be a pictorial presentation, or heck, it can even be a video, right? Just record yourself with a video and explain or talk about it. Like, don't worry about the format. The most acceptable one, of course, are slides and Word. Video would be too revolutionary unless you're really good at it. But yeah, don't worry about the format. Any format works.
That should be informative. That should be informative.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. So, hi, Madri. So, thank you for the beautiful presentation given by you, first of all. And so, I started my entrepreneurship journey 3 years back while I was in college in my second year. And I started out with the systems like the creation of softwares and all. I worked in HR space and the edtech space. So my question is basically like, how's I'm from a non-technical background. I graduated last year from BCom, Bachelor of Commerce. How's my entrepreneurship journey going to help me in my first product management role in any capacity, in any of the company?
So, well, Ujjwal, first of all, I think you're in a great position. Having or being an ex-entrepreneur is, I think, a superpower if you're going for a product manager role. Because if you've been an entrepreneur, you would understand a lot of aspects of business at a go, and there's no better learning experience than trying to sell your
Mhm.
own thing or trying to earn money on your own through a business venture, right? Uh, Another thing that I would encourage you or tell you about is, if you would, and this is something that you can do a normal Google research on, is when you
Mhm.
go to LinkedIn, you'd see that a lot of product managers in FANG organizations are ex entrepreneurs or ex founders, right?
Yeah, correct.
So, and not saying that that is the benchmark, because the fact that you work at Google doesn't necessarily mean makes you a great product manager. But yeah, well, they do have great products indeed, right? So coming to your question, whether technical capabilities are required or not, and I'm going to take Google's example specifically because Google is a highly technical company, right? It was founded by engineers. So when a company like that has product managers who have entrepreneurial experience but not technical experience, and they're able to crack that role, sort of, answers your question. Uh, One thing which you want to keep in mind, well, go for the basics, right? There are a lot of resources online with respect to that. Hey, how does basically an API work, or what is front end, or what is back end, or what is a database, right? Just the basics of it. Not saying you need to understand how to write a query on SQL and how to figure out how to add a value in database, but just the basics of it. If not, uh, to leverage or put yourself in the best position possible, I would recommend going for products where the product role or the product itself is not very technical in nature, right? An example would be, uh, again, you are going to be a product manager, let's say, for a games company, right? Over there, uh, in a games company, if you're taking care of, okay, how and what feature you should launch in our game for people to use it more and eventually go to a paid plan of the game, right? Over there you might not need to have a lot of technical expertise, but an understanding of what makes a person buy things on a game, right? Why do people, when they're playing PUBG, buy these skins which are overtly priced and still go for it, and try and do these challenges where they have to pay like $200, $300, right? I'm just using an arbitrary example.
Understanding the user behavior.
Exactly. So you need to basically leverage your experience as an advantage rather than as a disadvantage. So the fact that you're an ex-founder, go for roles which are not very technical per se, right? And you'd figure that out from what kind of product they're into, what the job description says, uh, what the requirement is when you do the initial rounds, and in your resumes and in your portfolio building that you've done, you highlight your lessons that you've learned from your entrepreneurial and journey as a founder, right? So for example, when I wrote that slide of business analysis pre-sales to my first product
Yes.
gig, I wrote stuff which and the skills which helped me become eventually a good product manager. You have a lot of similar stuff.
Thank you so much, Himadri. That's a very useful insight for me.
Yeah. Glad that it helped.
Yeah, hi Himadri.
Yeah. Hey, hi, Shanansu.
Yeah, it was a great session. My question is just an extension of what Ujjwal actually asked. I wrote my question into the chat also. So Ujjwal said that he has an entrepreneurial experience, but with me, the scene is completely different. I have an experience into sales. I have an experience into being an analyst, into like different kind of like I have a experience into HR sales. I have an experience into finance sales. I have an experience into edtech also. So how will these things will help me transition into a product management role? First thing, and what are the things that I need to work on to land myself into a product manager apart from the technical things?
So, Sudhanshu, if you have to ask me simple framework, what I would say, and from whatever I hear from your profile, right? So I'll go back to the let's do a generic. Let's just do a comparison, right? So let's look at your profile from this lens, right? Yeah. So you have experience of sales, and you've done sales for a host of different stuff. EdTech, you mentioned finance, you mentioned a lot of things, right? So because you have experience into sales, I would assume that as far as your demoing, as far as your selling, as far as your articulation, and as far as your verbal and written communication goes, it should be good enough, because sales guys, you're basically trying to convince the other person to pay for it and pay for the product which they might not even need, right? Which is the biggest challenge in the world, I think. So that's one good thing. Apart from that, the other thing that you can leverage is what I also see is that you work across various different products, right? So someone who's worked onto various different products and been able to sell them shows me that this guy is really hands-on in terms of whatever product he needs to learn, right? So you're very agnostic that way. You're not. So if I give you a EdTech product, you'll be able to understand the EdTech product, the nuances of it. Okay, this is the plan. These are the things. This is how a teacher class happens. This is how our video sessions happen. Compared to a fintech product where you'd be able to understand. Okay, this is how the payment gateways work. This is our billing plan, etc., etc. Right?
Yeah.
So when you go for an interview round and when you try to apply for something in your product portfolio, you have to bring that out, that your understanding of products, of varied products, has sort of helped you, sell better. That's one, right? So build on that. The technical stuff that you already spoke about is great. In your product portfolio, you have to mention these products and you have to say that, okay, while I was selling these products, and this is something that you must have felt as a sales guy, that when you're selling something, people are always asking that, okay, do you have this XYZ feature? And you have to say, okay, no, we don't, but we have something else that exactly does the same thing. But he would say, okay, no, I needed something else. This would not suffice. And he would say either no or yes, or you'll be able to convince them. So you have a real insight into how a customer thinks when they ask for a product, and you need to play on that strength. So in your resume, when you write about your sales experiences, right, highlight how you were able to do those product sales, highlight how you were able to get those customer insights, highlight how you worked on various different products across these domains and you were still able to sell them or meet your targets or whatever it is, right? And then go for there are various ways and various things that you can go for, but you can just go for a step 4, which is become and try and crack a role at a startup where you can say that, hey, worst case scenario, if I'm not getting great at product management, the startup is going to use as a salesperson, right? So it's a win-win for them. They're getting an experienced sales guy and a guy who wants to break into product management. They might use you for both, and you would have some experience under your belt as a product manager, right? That's one actionable advice that I would have to give you. In terms of product portfolio and resume, just highlight things which talk about how domain and technology agnostic you are, and you are still able to sell those.
Okay, Himadri. That was very insightful. Thank you. Thanks for the insight.
Yeah.
Hi, Himadri. It's me, Sayed. I have a question. So you said that we should choose our domain before applying. Not before applying to any organization. We should be concerned that what type of domain we want to go. But since I have a technical writer and I have been with product team all out in my career. So now the thing is that since I don't have the product manager, the experience, but I know all the things that they do, and I have been working with them a lot. But since I don't have that, designation as a product manager, if I say that I just want to be in fintech domain or just in telecom domain, because I have been part of these two domains, won't my chances to be a product manager lessen? Because now I have to see, like, if there are 1,000 companies, only fintech are around 100, and then I will choose just go to 100. So, instead of having a broader, broader look, I am just narrowing it down, and my chances for to get shortlisted in 1,000 company maybe more rather than in 100 companies. So, how should I think about that?
So I understand, Sayed, the point of view that you're coming from. I would want you to, and I would suggest you to rather look at it from this standpoint, that earlier you have a very broader view of that, okay, I want to get into product management and any product management that I can get into, right? And from there, I would say, rather than you looking at it that you've reduced your chances because you've now shortlisted or filtered out certain roles, you should look at it in a way that, okay, you've narrowed down certain choices where you have maximum chances of success. Now, just consider it and think of it from a employer's perspective, right? So you worked in fintech products, right? And you have a technical background. Mm-hmm. So if I am owning a fintech company, and I see that Sayed applies for the role, I talk to Sayed and I understand, because he's been a developer he knows what goes behind or under the hood, right? You understand that, okay, if a particular feature is being built or if a particular functionality has been introduced, what actually goes into making it. You already have that understanding. What you now want to do is go into the ideation phase rather than the execution phase as an engineer, right? So I don't need to even teach you the basics of fintech. I don't need to teach you, okay, how RBI guidelines work. I don't need to teach you how payment gateways work. I don't need to teach you how, what kind of authentication mechanisms are there for as far as fintech is concerned, right? I don't need to teach you all of that because you're already well versed with it.
Mhm.
Now think that I am a product manager or I am heading a company which is a chatbot company, right? Now, when you come to me, the only place you will already be aware of is the fintech part of my chatbot. If at all my chatbot is processing payment, right? You will not know how NLP works. You will, I'm assuming, right? You might know right now, but let's take in this example that you only have fintech experience. So in the chatbot experience, you might not know how NLP works. You might not know how intent entity recognition works. You might not know how use cases work in chatbot. You might not know how, what are the biggest challenges when it comes to making chatbot, right? You don't know all of that. Now, I'm not saying you're not going to learn it. You might learn it as well, right? But if I have to place my bets on someone, what do you think? Like, as a person or as an organization, I would always go for someone that, okay, this guy already knows certain level of things. I don't need to teach him from scratch. Let's get him in, right? As opposed to someone where I have to teach him a set of things, a slew of stuff from scratch, which by the way is exactly what we are doing in step 2. We are building a portfolio, skill set and product thinking to show them that, hey, I already know how to do a product tear down. I already know how to look at a problem and break it down into smaller components and try and understand how we are going to better it. I already know all of that. And that is what I'm showcasing through this case studies, right? So we are doing it. So if you go for roles which are already into fintech, roles and products and domains that you've already worked as a developer, it gives you an upper leg. It gives you an advantage over other people who do not have experience because they have to first, again, read about those payment gateways. They don't even know, okay, reading is something else. But when you do practical implementation, it's a different ball game altogether, right? And you have an advantage over there. So look at it as an advantage that you have to leverage rather than, a handicap that now you've decreased your chances, is what I would say.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No worries. All right. I think a lot of people have dropped off as well. I'm going to quickly check questions over here. So I think Sudhanshu, we've already spoken about. Ankita has also asked a question. There's a question by Vishal. I'm not sure. Vishal, are you there? All right. I think he's not here, but it's a good question. So I'm going to take both the questions. So the first question he's asked is, how much relevant PM experience you have? How do you answer this question? So, well, answer it truthfully. If you worked as a product manager somewhere, you say you have X years of product management experience. If you say you do not have worked as a product manager, do not lie, is what I would say. If you worked as a BA, don't say that you worked as a product manager, don't do that. So answer it truthfully, number one. Number two, while tailoring a resume, do not change the actual designations. Again, that would be a little bit of lying, and I wouldn't really recommend that. Be truthful. If you worked as a BA, if you worked as a delivery manager, a product owner, or a scrum master, or a program manager, write the actual designation and role. But in those details, what you could do is highlight things which would be relevant from a product manager standpoint as well, right? And I spoke about those skills. I spoke about there's a lot of skills as a product manager, both soft and hard skills that you would need to have to break that role. Highlight those skills when you were doing that. So as a software developer, I would say that, while I delivered on products or while I launched these many products or did a feature release of this many products, I would say that this feature release of the products that I worked upon led to let's say improving our user acquisition by 20% or reducing our churn by 30%, right? So I'll give it a metric and give it a business outcome metric, right? So what you're doing over there is you're talking about your role, you're talking about the accomplishments and the things that you've done in that role, but also giving it a outcome driven metric to it, which sort of dials it into your product experience, right? But would not recommend changing the role or designation or saying that if you worked as a BA and try and highlight it as a product manager experience. Reason being because even if you do it in the initial rounds, when you speak and when you give your interviews, it will come out and people you'll talk about it and it will in conversation it will definitely come out. So I wouldn't recommend doing that. All right, I think that sort of brings us to the end. We've answered all the questions. So thank you so much for joining in. Feel free to ask any other questions, to Sarika and team or to me. Reach out to me on my LinkedIn, on my email, or wherever. Yeah, happy to answer any questions that have been left unanswered. And yeah, thanks a lot for joining us.